All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to completely transform your Postman workflow. If you use Postman regularly, you already know it's an absolutely incredibly powerful tool for API testing. But it is just so easy to fall into habits that turn your testing into a literal, manual, repetitive chore. Well, we're changing that today. Whether you're on the free Postman web app or using the desktop client, by the time we wrap up, we're going to turn that manual chore into a seamless, completely automated process that saves you time and honestly just heavily reduces errors. Let's get right into it.
So let's start with a really honest question. Are you still manually changing your base URLs one by one every single time you need to switch your testing context? Going from a dev server to staging and then to pod? It is such a remarkably common pain point. You end up wasting valuable development time updating hard-coded data across dozens of requests, all just to test the exact same functionality on a different server. It completely breaks your flow, and frankly, it introduces a massive risk for human error. Consider the visual contrast of what we're aiming for today. Think about your current before state. You probably have a messy, hard-coded collection where something like dev-api.example.com is just scattered across every single request. If that URL changes, good luck, you have to hunt down every single instance of it. Now, think about the after state. By using a clean, dynamic variable reference, your request is suddenly flexible. It simply doesn't care what the base URL is anymore. It just dynamically pulls whatever value is currently active. So much cleaner, right?
Okay, Section 1. Understanding Postman variable scopes. Before we actually start clicking around in the interface, we really need to map out how the data flows. Understanding variable scopes is basically the foundational concept that makes all of this automation possible. Postman uses a very strict hierarchy to figure out which value to use, and it moves from the broadest scope down to the narrowest. So, global variables apply across your entire workspace. Then, collection variables are specific to just one collection. Environment variables apply only when that specific environment is actually selected. Data variables are temporary. They're pulled from external files during automated runs. And finally, local variables are those transient, temporary values generated during a specific script run. So the absolute most crucial point to remember is this rule right here. Narrower scopes always override broader ones. And this isn't just some random technical quirk. It's actually a vital security feature. It means you can safely set a generic, non-sensitive default at the global or collection level, but then securely override it with specific, sensitive credentials at the environment or local level. This completely prevents secret leaks and ensures your private tokens stay safe on your local machine, even when you're collaborating with your team.
Moving right along to Section 2, setting up your environments.
With the theory out of the way, let's jump into the actual practical implementation. Setting this up is incredibly straightforward. First, you're going to want to direct your attention to the top right corner of the Postman app. That's where the environment drop-down lives. Just click it, select Manage Environments, and hit Add. Next, give it a really clear name, like dev or staging. Finally, define your initial variables. This is exactly where you enter keys like base URL, auto token, or user ID, along with the specific values for that environment. And just like that, once you save it, you've created a totally reusable configuration. Now, once your environment is active, you use those variables in your requests with a very specific syntax. You just wrap the variable name in double curly braces. But hey, a quick warning here. It is absolutely vital that your spelling and capitalization match perfectly with what you saved in your environment settings. Also, double check that you don't have any extra spaces inside those braces. When you hit send, Postman dynamically swaps out those double curly braces for the actual URL stored in your active environment. It's like magic.
All right, on to Section 3, automating auth with scripts.
Now we are getting into the ultimate level-up solution. We've successfully removed the manual URL swapping, but there's usually one last major bottleneck that slows down testing, right? Authentication. To tackle this, especially when you're dealing with those annoying expiring OAuth 2.0 tokens, we use pre-request scripts. These are essentially snippets of JavaScript code that run immediately before a request is ever dispatched to the server. Because they run first in the Postman execution order, they are literally the perfect tool for automating the incredibly cumbersome process of manually requesting, copying, and pasting access tokens.
And it really comes down to this single line of code. This is the Postman API method that makes dynamic injection possible. Instead of you sitting there manually pasting a new token into your environment settings every hour, your pre-request script can just fetch a fresh token behind the scenes and use this exact command to dynamically update your environment variable automatically. So your main request then fires using a completely fresh token, and you didn't even have to lift a finger.
The logic behind a really solid pre-request script essentially follows a check and fetch pattern. The script quickly retrieves your current token's metadata, calculates whether or not it has expired, and if it has, it conditionally fetches a brand new token via your authentication API. Finally, it just updates the variable. This logic guarantees completely seamless authentication for every subsequent request in your collection. It entirely removes the token bottleneck, which is going to save you a massive amount of manual effort over time.
And here we are, Section 4, the climax, one-click environment switching. So we've built the foundation, and we've completely automated the authentication. Let's look at the real-world payoff and see exactly why setting all of this up is entirely worth your effort. Picture this high-stakes scenario. A support engineer is handed a really critical bug that's currently happening in production. To fix it, they absolutely have to reproduce that exact same workflow in the staging environment. Doing this the old, hard-coded way, that engineer would have to go into their Postman collection, manually find every relevant request, and painstakingly type over the production URL with the staging URL, just crossing their fingers that they don't miss one or make a typo. But with our new setup, oh, it's a game changer. With just one single click of that environment dropdown in the top right corner, exactly 12 hard-coded URLs in their collection are instantly, and flawlessly, replaced with staging configurations. Boom. The base URL changes, the database IDs shift right over to their staging equivalents, and a fresh staging authentication token is dynamically injected. Let's quickly recap the main things you should take away from this explainer today. Implementing environments and variables fundamentally transforms how you work. It completely eliminates the need for any manual URL updates. By combining variables with pre-request scripts, you've fully automated your auth token refreshes. And because you're smartly relying on the separation of scopes, you prevent those terrifying accidental credential leaks when you share collections. Ultimately, as we just saw, it massively speeds up critical tasks like bug reproduction and testing.
So I want to leave you with this one thought. If a single click can save you from the tedious, highly error-prone task of manually updating a dozen URLs, what else could you automate in your API workflow today? Postman is incredibly powerful, but only when you stop treating it like a manual text editor and start treating it like the automated testing platform it was literally designed to be. Take these concepts, go build your first environment, write your first pre-request script, and just watch your productivity absolutely soar. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.